We have a pope. He dresses like a pope. He sounds like a pope. He even sings like a pope.
Regina Caeli, letare, alleluia.
What are we to make of the first American pope? Is this son of Vatican II going to govern in the style of Pope Benedict XVI? Or will he be Francis 2.0? Plus, tonight, old RTV footage captures an amazing moment wherein the entire case for the Latin Mass was presented to the new pope during the Synod on Synodality. And finally, Pope Leo calls for an end to the war in the Holy Land, just as the American president breaks ranks with Bibi Netanyahu and brokers a peace deal with Iran. Buckle up, folks. This is gonna be fun. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt, and this is the Remnant Underground. We are back in the underground. Good to be home, huh, guys? Yeah. It's a long couple of weeks back stateside now after having covered an obviously history-making conclave over in Rome. By the way, before we get started, thanks. I just can't say enough to, we had so many hundreds of thousands of people that were watching, following the coverage and weighing in with opinions and critiques and goods and the bads and all of that. So thank you so much for kind of making us feel like we were all over there doing this together, to watch that coverage and to see what was going to happen next to the Catholic Church, which of course, as we always say, is not just about the Catholic Church. It impacts the entire world. This is history-making stuff that's happening right now. So the coverage is going to continue. I know we picked up a lot of new people over there. The coverage obviously is going to continue. We do politics, we do church affairs, we do everything. So if you want to continue to follow us, which I really hope you do, please click below to this e-blast of ours. Sign up for my e-letter so I can stay in touch with you and tell you when we post and all of that. Because this is going to be a really, it's a new chapter. We have a new pope. And you know what? Our new pope is not Pope Francis II. Everybody worried about that, remember? It's not Pope Francis II. I want to explain why that is. But before we get to that, I got to keep the lights on. So please do keep in mind the sponsors of this program. Tonight, we're always proud to have as our sponsor Charity Mobile, which is America's premier pro-life phone company with 30 years in the business. A plan for all your data needs, from unlimited down to straight talk and text. And they have a special offer for Remnant viewers. If you switch to Charity Mobile today, you will get a free phone, free activation, and free shipping. And 10% of your month, this is the good part as far as I'm concerned, 10% of your monthly plan price goes to the charity of your choice. And the Remnant happens to be on their list. So go to CharityMobile.com/RTV right now and use the code RTV at checkout. Help out the pro-life movement and at the same time, help out the Remnant. That's CharityMobile.com/RTV. Now, in related news, hell just froze over. That's right, folks. Over at Saturday Night Live, the liberals over there nailed it this week. All y'all Jimmy Martin types out there, listen up.
I also love that conservatives are already complaining that this pope is too woke. How woke can a 69-year-old man from Chicago be? It's not like he came out and was like, hey, I'm Pope Leo XIV, he, him. The reality is there are no woke Catholics. If you're a woke Catholic, you're just not Catholic anymore.
There's a problem when the guys at the notoriously left-wing, woke, liberal Saturday Night Live actually have a better handle on what's going on in the Catholic Church than 90% of the bishops throughout the whole world. That's exactly what's going on. These people aren't Catholics. People say to me all the time, oh, you gotta stop calling it. It's not traditional Catholic. Why are you doing the traditional Catholic? I would love to drop traditional Catholic. The problem is you need some way of differentiating authentic Catholicism from the other stuff that's going on. Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden variety of Catholicism, which is what SNL's talking about. If you're not following the rules of the church, if in no way you're behaving like a Catholic, you're all pro-abortion and pro-gay marriage and you're just simply not Catholic. And this is not rocket science. And the other thing I'm going to talk about tonight, which is also not rocket science, by the way, is figuring out what we as traditional Catholics, what we're to make, how we're to respond, how we are to act when something monumental happens in the news, in our church especially, which just happened over in Rome. Even if you're not Catholic, what happens to the Catholic Church, the direction in which the Catholic Church goes, impacts the entire world. Everybody knows this. And if you want like a quick little proof, what did the globalists do when they wanted to launch COVID? Who did they go to first? They went to the Pope, right? They went to Pope Francis, and he helped them launch the whole experiment, the whole COVID experiment. Everybody knows, including the radicals on the left, the Catholic Church makes or breaks the deal. It's history changing even still, even after all these years of revolution in the church. So as traditional Catholics, we have to understand what's our role in all of this. The ones who are applying the pressure to our own church from within to hold the line, to stay Catholic, to not become woke, as the SNL guy just said, and therefore to cease being Catholic. What do we do? What's our role in all this? What's actually happening here should be patently obvious to traditional Catholics, especially those of us who've been in the trenches for a long time. What happened? What just happened? Well, the reign of terror seems to be over now, just because of the temperament of the man who took Peter's chair now. His temperament. Temperament is important. Evaluating his theology is important. Trying to understand his philosophy is important. Trying to understand where he's been. His history is important. And you know what? Trying to understand his temperament. Temperament says everything. Because if you think of what was the worst aspect of the past 12 years, it was the temperament of the man. The bully, the wagging his fingers at people, separating the hands of altar boys, slapping ladies' hands over there in the piazza when they got a little out of line, screaming and shouting at faithful Catholics for being rigorist. And that's a temperament issue. It really is. So I think we can safely say at this point, the reign of terror is over. As they keep telling me in Rome, there was a climate of fear here which has lifted. There's a sense of hope and relief in Rome. Not to say the revolution's over or the war's over, but there's a change, right? The war, as anyone who knows anything about this revolution is going to tell you, the war goes on. They're not going to give up very easily. It's going to take a long time. So what do we have in Leo? Do we have a man who might actually be serious when he says he wants to listen? I got to tell you, I first met him during the Synod on Synodality. We'll get into that in a moment. A couple years ago, and I was struck, and thank goodness we've played some of the videos since. What I was struck by Prevost at the time, was a sincerity, was a gentleman, a guy who actually seemed to want to build bridges, not just use that listening thing as an excuse to crush doctrine. He seemed kind of sincere. So I would say, based not only on what I saw in Rome over the past 2 weeks, but also what we saw during the synods with Cardinal Prevost, I would say, and this is just my evaluation of the man, that this is a well-intentioned man. He still has the faith. He's not a bomb thrower. But here's the important part so that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Read my lips. He most certainly is a son of Vatican II. And why wouldn't he be? Of course he is. He's Novus Ordo. That's kind of our lot now in life. That's just the way it's going to be for a while, right? He's not a traditionalist. And I pointed this out right away, in fact, from on top of the colonnade. The bells are still ringing. The smoke just went up. Everybody calm down. It could have been worse. Now, again, we were under no delusions then, and we're not under any now, right? The very best outcome, in fact, would have been what? You probably would think of Cardinal Burke, or Cardinal Muller, men who I know pretty well. I've interviewed them. I have extremely high regard for them as men of faith, men of the church. But I'm not trying to cover up the fact that both of these fellows, both of these cardinals, are defenders of Vatican II. They want to interpret Vatican II like Cardinal Ratzinger did with the hermeneutic of continuity and a traditional, to the traditional church, traditional faith. But they're both Vatican II guys because that's just where we are on the timeline. They both say the new Mass. So we have to keep this all in perspective. We weren't expecting, again, Pope Pius X, because where would he even have come from the College of Cardinals that we have right now, right? And so I was kind of surprised when some of my friends and allies on the traditional Catholic movement were just really, really upset when Pope Leo, at his first Mass in the Sistine, when he had, for example, ladies reading the readings, and they were rending their garments and very upset. My reaction was, duh. What the heck were you expecting? What do you think was going to happen? Of course there are going to be ladies. Do you know where we are right now in the middle of this revolution? Do you remember who gave us lady readers and altar girls? It was the great Pope John Paul. It's been going on a long time. This isn't going to end overnight, right? Is it good news, Eminence? Good news?
Good news.
Yeah? The world thinks it's fantastic. That's not a good sign. Is it good news, Eminence?
Wonderful news.
So there you have it. So Cardinal O'Malley, who seems to be softening a little in his later years, he says it's good news. The world says it's good news. But you can't lose your mind over that. Everybody's got to put a spin on it, you know? So we're going to find out. You never know. The war goes on, you know? You just can't... What did you think? The revolution was just going to disappear? It's all over? The revolution goes on. This was my third conclave, in fact. Third one that I've covered in Rome. You kind of get used to it, you know? And I got to tell you, however, there was a different spirit this time. Okay, so the first meeting of the press was in marked contrast, I'm telling you, to what we saw 12 years ago. Francis, for example, was much more of a sort of a stand-up comic with the press. Again, take it for what it's worth, but once again, Pope Leo not only gave a blessing, but he stands up and he gives a full Latin blessing to the press, the traditional.
Dominus vobiscum, sit nomen Domini benedictum, adiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini, benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen. Tante grazie.
Again, this is if you are trying to be in the mold of Francis, if you want the world to think you're Francis II, why do you stand up and give the blessing like that in Latin? This is to the press. This is not a religious event. We're in all the 6 hideous audience hall. So I don't know. They keep saying, take these things for what they're worth, add them up. At the end of the day, we'll see where we stand. Now, again, these are just, first impressions, and that was mine. As I say, the first time I met then Cardinal Prevost was in Rome back in 2023 at the Synod on Synodality. He was serving as sort of a spokesman during the press conferences in the Vatican Press Hall, and Walter filmed an answer that we already showed this earlier in the week, but I want to do it again. He filmed the reply that Cardinal Prevost gave to a question on the big synodal push for women's ordination. Let me just set this up for just for a second. Women's ordination had been something that even during the Amazon Synod, Bishop Kreutler had talked about absolutely women ordination. So that the entire press corps is waiting for the moment. Some of you will remember this from the news. Francis is going to ordain deacons. Francis is going to maybe even ordain women priests, But certainly women deacons are coming. So it was in that sort of charged atmosphere. The entire press corps is sitting there and saying, when are you going to give us women priests? When are you going to ordain women? That's what has to happen if this is a true synodal church, right? And this, I thought in that context, this was the answer that Cardinal Prevost gave, which I think is quite good.
Clericalizing women doesn't necessarily solve a problem. It might make a new problem. But I think that one of the things that has become clear during even this month, but the time leading up to this, is that it's not just a given that because in society women are recognized, that, a woman can be president or a woman can have many different kinds of roles of leadership in the world. It's not like there's an immediate parallel to say in the church, therefore, and that our categories, I think, and the life of the church are different, need to be different, and so some of those questions will continue to be there, to be reflected upon, but it isn't as simple as saying that, at this stage we're going to change, if you will, the tradition of the church after 2,000 years.
Now, I'm bringing this up because one of the big knocks against Cardinal Prevost is that, oh man, he's Francis II. He is a synodal guy. Yes, he's synodal. But what does he mean by that? How does he define synodality? And how does he intend to implement it? If, for example, synodality for Pope Leo would include listening to the traditional Catholics and overturning some of the crazy things, like put Strickland back, put Vigano back, overturn the Traditionalist Custodes thing, bring the Latin Mass back. Okay, I guess synodality has its place, right? If that were to happen, if it was genuine and sincere, because our problem with synodality from the beginning has been it's an excuse to crush doctrine. It's an excuse to bring in, homosexuality, LGBT rights, wipe out the catechisms, and wipe out the moral teaching of the church. If Cardinal Prevost has a little different attitude and he's actually somewhat sincere, well, let's wait and see. Because we did see some things, and we reported on this at the time, at the Synod on Synodality in 2023, the conference that I just showed you, the answer to women priests, which Walter filmed. This was the same press conference, some of you may remember, because we played the clip a couple of times, wherein Vatican journalist Diane Montagna asked about the Latin Mass.
One group that really feels marginalized, particularly in the United States, have been the Catholics who go to the traditional Latin Mass, many of whom are really trying to live out the Vatican II's call to live as the domestic church, as a family. And so I just wonder what you think those people and priests could perhaps contribute to the next assembly, and if they should see more inclusion in the synodal process. Thank you.
Before we get to Broglio's answer to Diane Montagna, I just want Walter to pan out a little bit. This is Walter's footage that he took during the conference. Pan out a little bit to see who was sitting just 2 seats down now when he answered this question. There he is. That's the current pontiff, Roman pontiff, right there. That's Pope Leo. He was right there when Archbishop Broglio said this.
In terms of those who are attracted to the traditional form of the Mass, I think the church is big enough for everyone, and I think that certainly their fervor, their devotion to family life, their attention to passing on the teachings of the church to their children, I think those are all things that can enrich all of us, and I hope there'll be a way to bring that richness into this whole synodal experience.
So there he is. He hears all of this. He's on that panel with Archbishop Timothy Broglio, president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, by the way, Broglio is. You see what I'm saying? The current pope, an American, sees his American brother bishop, president of the United States Catholic Bishops Conference, acknowledging what?
In terms of those who are attracted to the traditional form of the Mass, I think the church is big enough for everyone. And
now you have the New York Times, how Pope Francis catalyzed the Catholic right in the U.S. This is the New York Times. Quote, Pope Francis's papacy galvanized a traditionalist stream that had always existed in the American church, and that strengthened and expanded throughout his papacy as a tide of resistance rose in the American church hierarchy in Washington and in the pews, end quote. Indeed, that's exactly what was going on. And Pope Leo knows that that's what was going on. So here's a question for you. Why in the world would the new pope actively seek to continue in the vein of Pope Francis with the divisive policies of destruction and disruption? It doesn't make any sense. So no wonder he chose the name Leo and not Francis II. No wonder he was wearing the mozzetta. No wonder he's living in the apartments. We're going to get to that in a minute. But he's signaling something completely different, a change in pace, a new sheriff in town. We're going in a different direction. And again, the traditional Catholics have to be right there to apply as much influence on that change in direction, that sea change, as possible. Speaking out works both in the church and, again, as I say, in the state. Back to this news in Washington and Israel and the Holy Land. I mean, this is huge, huge, huge news in the Middle East. Donald Trump breaking up with what I consider, and a lot of people consider, the war criminal, Bibi Netanyahu.
That, coupled with the ongoing instability and the war on Gaza, which Trump wants wrapped up. I mean, he said even before he was sworn into office, he'd called Netanyahu and told him to end it, finish the military action, wrap this up. Netanyahu hasn't done it, and Steve Witkoff, the president's personal envoy in Israel on Sunday, told the families of hostages, reportedly, that the president has concluded that Netanyahu wants to prolong the war, not bring it to an end.
Wow. Did you ever see that coming? Because I sure did. No, I get it. Hamas attacked and killed innocent people, civilians. Anybody who does that should pay. But does justice for that mean that you and I have to back retaliatory war crimes against 2 million Palestinians, half of whom are children? This is going to help. If you're afraid of Muslims, man, be careful supporting this U.S.-backed war crime in Israel, if in fact it happens. Speak up now. Let saner voices prevail here, or we are going to have hell on earth for the next generation to deal with. Somebody, somewhere, should be suggesting we tap the brakes, don't you think? Yeah, so go from there, fast forward to May of 2025.
So we'll see what happens, but we're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace.
Much to the consternation of Israel, and at the same time placing himself in line with what? With whom? With the new American Pope, whose first message to the world, let's not forget, was decidedly anti-Zionist. He gets up there on the loggia today after singing the Regina Coeli, which we just showed you, after blessing us 3 times in triplicate in Latin and doing all this rather nice traditional stuff. Here's what he says. This is Pope Leo this morning. I'm deeply pained by what is happening in the Gaza Strip. Let the ceasefire begin immediately, okay, so that's one thing. Provide humanitarian aid to the exhausted civilian population and free all the hostages. So he's kind of taking, both sides. Hey, yeah, Hamas, free all the hostages as well. So this is both sides there. He comes out and I think really takes a shot at the whole Zionist thing that's going on over there. Again, don't forget what was happening just a week or so before Francis died. Rabbi Shmuley traveling all the way to Rome to tell Pope Francis it was time to declare Jerusalem was not Christian Jerusalem. Jerusalem was just the home of the Jews. It didn't work. But he said, the good rabbi, said the next pope just simply has to be Cardinal Parolin. Parolin would be perfect. We want Parolin. Right? Instead, they got Prevost, who just said, knock it off. Stop the war. Right? So little signs, but little signs that mean a lot. Little signs that are geopolitical in nature, for heaven's sakes. And here's another one a little closer to home, another little sign that you may have missed. 2 days ago, the Vatican press office sent out this photo, this official photo of Pope Leo, and I wonder if you noticed something different about this. Look at the bottom, underneath the actual photograph of the Pope. The PP is back. Papa Pontifex, Pope and Pontiff, Pastor Pastorum, Shepherd of Shepherds, right? The traditional title, signature of the popes, all the popes. Now it was conspicuous, the PP was conspicuous by its absence for 12 years. On the tombs of all the popes going back centuries, the only exception is Francis the Humble. So from his first official photo, which is right here, to his signature, also here, to his tomb, Francis was just Francesco. Just Francis. Francis will do. This we were told was humble, to set himself apart from all of the other popes. Francesco. Now the new Pope, Leo, evidently was not too terribly impressed with that. Well, he chooses Leo the 14th as his name, and he returns to the papal apartment, too, where the popes, by the way, had subjected themselves to a sort of a virtual imprisonment for centuries. People don't understand this about the popes. It's like the brother of the pope when he was interviewed, one of the brothers, and he said, in a way, I don't know if I'll ever see Bob again. He said, he's gone. Once you become the pope, I can't go visit him, say, hi, I'm here to see my brother. Their lives will never be the same, friends. So when we talk about the papal palace, when you go and you visit, like, oh my gosh, this is pretty austere. You can see over here now is the Pope's, these are the old papal apartments. So the second window from the right on the very top, that was the one that we talk about before they moved to Santa Marta, which is over here. That was where the Pope's little light was always on when he was home. And I always thought that was a very comforting thing. Little did I know that the day after his election, a man named Pope Leo XIV would be moving back to the papal apartment, which again is a little sign that's actually staggeringly significant. So welcome back, Your Holiness. And the thing is, friends, all of these signs bespeak something else. They signal in my opinion, that papal governance, papal style, papal personality, and the papal approach now is going to be markedly different from what came before, as I just said. And this matters because direction matters. In what direction will Leo go? Will he actually build bridges, and will he actually listen? Will he actually be willing to dialogue with, say, us? We got to wait and find out. But what else are we going to do, friends? This is where I get a little impatient or confused. I'm not sure what the alternative is. If you're not going to sort of sit in the system, humbly watch what happens, pray for the best, accept the verdict, and then try to work strategically to put some influence wherever you can, what is your option? What are you going to do? You're going to leave the church? I don't understand. You're going to run off and get your mom to call a conclave and elect you Pope? What's the alternative again? I've always been confused by that. What are we supposed to do other than this? Because you know what? There's only one battlefield. If you want to fight as soldiers, confirmed soldiers of Jesus Christ, you want to fight for the Holy Mother Church, there's only one battlefield to do it on. Fight for Catholic restoration. And this is it. This is how you do it. This is what Archbishop Lefebvre did. Archbishop Lefebvre, what did he do? He signed the documents of Vatican II, for heaven's sakes. He put as much pressure as he possibly could as a traditionalist on the council, signed the documents, and then afterwards did everything he could so that the time bombs wouldn't be detonated, so the spirit of the evil spirit of the Second Vatican Council would be curtailed, right? He stayed in the system. He never wanted to break with Rome. Never would have broken from Rome, right? He was trying to keep the faith. So that's the Catholic spirit. You stay in, you hang in there no matter what's happening. There's only one church. You got to stay in it. Like it or not, right now the human element of the Catholic Church is in flames. It's in chaos. I get it. But even then, you have to stay on and fight. And if that means that we got to spend the rest of our lives fighting for Holy Mother Church, for the restoration, and being mocked for doing it, so be it. I guess that's what God is asking of us. If that means that we have to suffer persecution in the church, with the church, so be it. Why are we in this war for the long haul or not? Do we understand the long revolution or not? Are we part of the biblical remnant of believers or not? Because if we are, we have to be willing to suffer with that biblical remnant of believers. So when I went to Rome to cover the conclave, I was not praying for some total victory. They're going to come home in a victory parade and everything was over, shut down the newspaper, we won, war is over. No. Where in the College of Cardinals these days, where would we have found the Giuseppe Cardinal Sarto, for example? Where would we have found him? It wasn't there. So the best that we could pray for during the conclave was what? It was a reprieve. A pope who, though not a traditionalist, would at least be willing to provide space for those of us who are to raise our children as our fathers and mothers had raised us. That's the game now. That's where we are in this revolution, in this occupied territory that is the Catholic Church. To raise your children in the traditions of the Catholic faith is everything. Bring back the Latin Mass. That impacts not just Latin Mass people. That impacts the entire church and the entire world, right? So right now, yes, I do have hope, but not because I think Leo was a traditionalist. He's not. He certainly is not. But he seems to be sort of an honest liberal who maybe is a truth seeker as well, and maybe has gone through the past 12 years of hell on earth, chaos, COVID, lockdowns, apostasy, right? Church closings all over the world. The breakup of the family, gone through all that, and he's beginning to change. He's beginning to reevaluate things a little bit. That's not unthinkable. You say, that'll never happen, Michael Matt. Go off and start your own church. Become your own bishop. It'll never happen from within. Really? Okay, once again, 2 words. Archbishop Vigano. 2 more. Bishop Strickland. It's happening all over the place. Where princes of the church are like, okay, we've tried so hard to play along, and we just can't do it anymore. You see? That's what's happening. Do you know we're going to have 4 bishops speaking at the Catholic Identity Conference this year? There's plenty of reasons to see this fatigue with the way things are going, and for even bishops and cardinals and perhaps popes to begin to turn back and say we're lost. And the only way to get back is to go back to where we came, back towards tradition. This This isn't a pipe dream. This is going to happen ultimately. Is it happening right now? I don't know. But we have to be open to the possibility that it might. And so I get very concerned when I see people, including priests, who seem to enjoy crushing anybody's hope. You can't fall for Leo. He's one of them. He's a Vatican II heretic. Right? Just slam the door on any sort of hope, any possibility of some sort of pressure being applied in the church. Hope that can lead to better things, to better pastures for all of us. That's the traditional Catholic thing. That's where traditional Catholicism has always been. Catholics have always been. Pope Benedict XVI, well, he wasn't a traditionalist. How many times have I talked about that? We were sitting there with Ronner in the necktie, Peritus at Vatican II. He wasn't a traditionalist. But the traditionalists, including me, when he came on the loggia at the conclave that I covered, his conclave, I had tears in my eyes. I was so overjoyed. You know why? Because it was obvious that Ratzinger, although a modernist and confused, he had kept the faith. And he was interested in bringing some sanity back to the church, right? He was interested in giving us the freedom to raise our children in the traditions of the Catholic faith of our fathers, which is the whole point and purpose of the church, to allow us to save the souls of our children, to save our own souls. That's the point. Not to fool around with the machinations and the politics of the Vatican. That's not where we, first and foremost, where any of us want to be. We want to be in our homes with our children, keeping the faith. So thanks to a pope like Benedict, a guy who was at Vatican II and proud of it, well, my children received all of their sacraments according to the traditional rite of the church. My children had all access to all the Latin masses that they could every day of their lives. And consequently, they've all kept the faith by remaining in the traditional sacramental life of the church. Yes, Benedict was not a traditionalist, just as Cardinal Robert Prevost is certainly not a traditionalist. But to these popes, to Pope Leo, I would beg, give us our freedom, holiness, to worship our God as our fathers did. And I really don't care how you blather on about synodality, Vatican II, or God help us, climate change. I don't care. My first duty is to keep the faith and to hand it down to my children. That's it. And I intend to do that, even inside of our very broken church today. We can't do anything else but stay part of the process, stay at the heart of the church, do what we can. Cannot leave. Somebody has to survive. Our children have to be taught the old faith so that they can live long enough to outlive this wretched revolution. So yeah, the little signs matter to me.
Regina Caeli, letare, alleluia. Quia, quemeruisti portare, alleluia. Resurrexit, sicut dixit, alleluia. Ora pro nobis Deum, alleluia. Gaude et letare Virgo Maria, alleluia.
You think that doesn't matter? Cardinal Prevost is not Archbishop Lefebvre, whose resistance, by the way, changed history, proving once again that resistance is not futile. But Cardinal Prevost still matters. As a son of the church who grew up in this nightmare revolution and who may just be trying to do his best, we can't read his heart. Let me give you an example. We just dodged what many people were saying was a communist president here in the United States, in Kamala Harris. Remember, everybody's calling Cammy the commie, right? She was a communist. We were really worried about communism, right? Well, here's Cardinal Prevost on April 12, 1995, at a seminar in Villanova University. He's a young priest. He says, quote, Marxist theology seeks to replace grace with revolution and ends up worshiping the state above God. May 14th, 2010. At the conference before Latin American bishops, quote, communism has even penetrated Christian circles disguised as solidarity. It is our pastoral duty to unmask it, end quote. On homosexuality, back on January 7th, 2012, during a radio interview in Peru, quote, they want to convince us that homosexuality is a neutral option, but God created man and woman, not a fluid identity, end quote. September 3rd, 2014, quote, we cannot bless what God has not instituted. The union between people of the same sex is not marriage, end quote. November 27, 2016, homily at Santa Maria Reina, quote, gender ideology is a cultural colonization that destroys the family from its foundations, end quote. October 5th, 2021, Continental Ecclesial Summit, quote, the LGBT lobby seeks to impose liturgical and pastoral norms contrary to the magisterium. It is a subtle form of persecution. February 18th, 2023, declaration prior to the consistory, quote, those who promote the abolition of sexual binarism want to reinvent creation. This is modern pride, disguised as inclusion, end quote. May 8th, 2025, first address as Pope Leo XIV, quote, I affirm clearly the Church cannot yield to communist ideologies nor to cultural impositions that deny natural law. Christ is the truth, and only in Christ is there freedom, end quote. Here's Pope Leo XIV again, May 14th, 2025, quote, Pope Leo XIII made a heartfelt appeal that the legitimate variety of Eastern liturgy and discipline may redound to the great honor and glory of the Church. And then, Prevost added, Pope Leo XIII's desire remains ever timely. It is likewise important to rediscover a sense of the primacy of God, penance, fasting, and weeping for one's own sins and for those of all humanity. It is vital, then, that you preserve your traditions, end quote. Thus suggesting that when it comes to the liturgy, Pope Leo will have a similar attitude as did Pope Benedict XVI.
I think we have to be open to change. We have to be open to seeing new ways of doing things. But we also have to be respectful of many wonderful traditions that have grown up in the Church through the years.
So we have to be open to the possibility, just the possibility, that Pope Leo is a sincere man who loves God and does not wish to permanently change the Church so that it can never be changed back again, to quote one of his recent predecessors. That does not seem to be his agenda. He is not a bully, and again, temperament matters. It seems to me that the only question that really matters, and certainly the only question that will matter a few months from now, is this. Are you better off today than you were over the past 12 years? Are we better off now? Because I believe we will answer that question in the affirmative a few months from now. If not, okay, we move on. We continue with business as usual. Either way, the war goes on, and God will save his church in his time. And all we need to do is stay in the church, keep the faith, and fight as best as we know how, as confirmed soldiers of Jesus Christ, confident that when God liberates his bride, we will be standing there right next to her, proud to be able to tell our grandchildren someday that we never abandoned her, no matter what, that we suffered what she suffered. We didn't back down, we didn't surrender. And when it looked like we were all going to have to die with her, well, the Holy Roman Catholic Church rose from the dead and saved our souls.